Welcome to Under Pressure, the podcast about becoming better men when it counts. I'm Cody Laughlin.
And I'm Brian Alfaro. Each week, we have honest conversations about building businesses, leading families, carrying responsibility, and the pressure that comes with trying to do all of it well. If that sounds like your world, you're in the right place.
No hype, no pretending we've got it all figured out, just real stories, real struggles, and what we're learning along the way. Let's get into it. Cheers. Good to be back here behind the mic again.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.
And this is a pretty special moment. We have our first guest.
First guest of the show, man. Really
First guest.
excited.
First guest with a great bourbon, man. You can't miss the bottle.
Well, we got to do it right to start it off.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've had a couple of great episodes already so far, and really excited. You know, we've been priming the audience talking about how we want to have some amazing guests on the show, people that can really add a lot of value to our listeners, people that have great stories, entrepreneurial backgrounds, but also have unique stories to share that we think can add a lot of value to the audience, right? So Darren's been a good friend now for several years, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but excited to have you on the show, Darren. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here, man. You know, I've talked about podcasting for a while now, and you guys are doing it, so it's cool.
We're doing it again.
Again, that's right. This is the second edition.
Yeah, we're doing it again. So podcast, a lot of fun, But for anyone who doesn't know who you are, give us a quick, it won't be 30 seconds, but give us the elevator pitch. Tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, and, your background on work as well. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. Darren Tompkins, people call me D. I am from a small town called Salem, Virginia, which is in the Appalachian Mountains. The only thing that people ever know about that's close by is Virginia Tech. Other than that, it was grew up pretty humble beginnings. I used the Army to get out of that. Was in the Army a total of 13 years. Active duty, reserves, and then went into RTC. Went into oil and gas, and I have a technology degree in geographic information systems. Led some digital mapping efforts and for operators and whatnot. Did some philanthropy, trying to find my way through life, and got into recruiting, which was the vehicle.
Not GIS.
Not GIS recruiting. No. Oil and gas, data centers, like a bunch of different stuff. But use it as a vehicle to get on that off ramp of getting out of the W-2. Took the life of an entrepreneur and just never looked back. And I like calling my shots, making my own hours of the day, spending the things that are more important to me now rather than just working a job.
Pickleball, we do that sometimes.
Do pickleball? Yeah, I'm kind of like showing my age here now. It's like, man, I really like this.
Brian, you seem like you're disadvantaged in that competition. I'm just saying.
He was doing well. But again, most of the guys were playing with like 60, 70 years old. So that could be a thing. But it's a unique time in my life right now. And the physical fitness part of it is still a big thing. I'm training for a High Rocks competition here in March. And pro wrestling is the other big piece of what I do. I'm not a pro wrestler. I'll never say that, but I have a hot sauce company, I own a pro wrestling ring. I've done independent promotions as a promoter and a manager. And it's just what keeps the variety of life going. And because I deal with a lot of process in my day to day. Love having the creative kind of balance on that.
You're on your way to hit the entrepreneurial American dream, and everyone dreams of being an entrepreneur, but there's a lot of things that come along from that, and a lot of it sounds great. Everything you said kind of gave us the tip of the iceberg, and we talk a lot about the iceberg model, how everything seems great on the top, but people forget all the struggles that went along the way to get you to where you're at, right? So I want to talk a little bit about your background. You talked about the Army, but let's go back even further. Let's talk about some things, maybe some things that during your childhood that kind of shaped who you are now today as a man, as a father, and as a husband. Were there any things back then that you can really look back on, whether it's family members or TV shows or movies or anything that you think really helped shape who you are today as a man?
Yeah, so there's good stuff and bad stuff from the childhood thing. Good stuff is where the Army ideal came from. I had a grandfather and great uncles that were World War II veteran heroes, as well as they were in the military police, which is what my initial MOS job was. And that's all great stuff to kind of shape your idea of what you want to be later on in life. We've had some challenges, which is a broken home, divorced very young. And again, my mother was a social worker, not a lot of money in Appalachia for that. Father was a chemist, again, not a lot of money in that. So they really had some challenges growing up. And when you come from that type of background in a small town like I was at, you think you have this footprint in your area. But what ended up happening is mom remarried a guy in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So my brother and I, two hicks that had the worst accents, which you cannot hear anymore.
I was like,
That's
where's
by
it at? I don't
design.
hear it.
Oh my God, the worst Southern draws ever. We moved to Burke, Virginia, which is a suburb of DC. They just thought we were the dumbest people they'd ever met in their entire lives. And that was tough. So when it comes to like taking things that are from your childhood and transitioning into what you want to be as an adult, that was number one priority for me, is get rid of the accent so people take me more seriously. And then you get in the Army and like half the dudes have that same accent, because they're coming from small, poor areas, But yeah, so pop culture has always been a big thing. Movies were a big outlet for us to
Escape.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Comic books and pro wrestling were ways to kind of escape. Of course, me being born in '74, Star Wars was a huge deal.
Sure. Still is. I love Star Wars.
A lot of those ideals came from, Luke and Ben, and wisdom from Yoda and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So much so that my daughter's names are Josie Vader Tompkins and Izzy Ray Tompkins.
Oh, that's awesome.
And your consulting company.
And the consulting company is Vader Ray Recruiting and Engineering. That was my wife's idea, to use their middle names with the VR, because all of our recruiters are virtual as well. So they just kind of came together. Hopefully Lucas will not sue me for that, but or Disney or whoever's owning whoever owns property now. But my dad was always a big movie guy. 1950s Universal monster creature features, Frankenstein and Dracula and all that kind of stuff. He watched some pretty. He would watch movies where my mom forbade me to see them. And of course, I'm on the staircase looking down.
Yep.
That's what's going on, watching Escape from New York. Anything Kurt Russell back in the 80s, like just baller. And he kind of became kind of an he's known as an anti-hero and a lot of that action stuff. That really resonated with me growing up. And there are a lot of values in movies and TV shows, especially when you were in the 80s, because all the cartoons you had, they were trying to sell you toys, but they all had a thing at the end,
Yep.
Good virtues and, G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle and that kind of stuff. You can still get that, but that message I think is mostly lost with
it's much
youth
different
of
now.
today,
Yep.
Yeah.
Now it's more like catchphrases and stuff like that. I mean, my kids watch the same crap over and over and over again.
Yep.
They're very young. They're 4 and 7, about to be 5 and 8. But those virtues as a kid do resonate with you for your entire life,
Were there any particular characters you would say, or maybe movies, and you mentioned a couple that you would say you got some really strong virtues for? Because I think that's what you hit was a really important point, that's much more challenging to find nowadays. And me being a young father, my daughter's starting to watch certain things, and I don't know if maybe it was something you was aware of, or if our parents were aware of it back then. Like, hey, I actually need to maybe screen this show or watch this show or do some Reddit research or whatever on what are my kids actually watching? Because there's a lot of messages out there that can be very toxic or poisonous for a kid, or plant the wrong seed that you don't realize is maybe getting watered over their journey through childhood, becoming a teenager, becoming an adult. And you look back in 20 years and you'd be like, holy cow, he or she got it from that show I used to let them watch, So looking back, were there some things for you that maybe left a strong imprint, some characters or some movies?
So different times, right? Back then when a movie came out, everybody talked about it because there weren't that many movies coming out.
And you actually went to the theater.
You went to the theater.
Yep.
And so those types of ideas were implanted on your little brain, and then you go to school, you talk about it, and then some people like the heroes, some people like the villains,
Right.
But when it came to things like Star Wars that had big virtue messages and all that, it was a marketing machine, and all of a sudden you're buying stuff with the quotes on it and everything. Nowadays it's impossible. It is so freaking hard to even get a movie noticed. And it's getting worse. Of course, I talked about AI in another podcast earlier this week, but like I'm a movie writer, producer. I have a short film that's been on Amazon since 2019, I think, at this point. You will never find it because there's so much content out there.
Yep.
Right. And that's what it is. It's overwhelming. My kids, they watch these YouTube things of other kids playing with toys, and it's just like, it gives us the wrong impression that they can just have whatever they want.
Yeah.
So we've had to like be big brother and censor some stuff. And that never happened back then because everything was on public systems, there was no secret viewings or, viewing stuff that you didn't, unless you did what I did, which is watch
Yep.
the movies, watch the TV through the railings on the stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now as a
Yeah.
parent, there's so much access, right, to
Mhm.
things that we just didn't have back then. If you weren't going to the movies or watching something on public TV or somehow got a VHS, of
Yeah.
a movie, right, that you probably shouldn't have, and then you had to be in front of the one TV in the house, put the VCR in, make sure it made a lot of noise, right?
One TV.
One TV.
One TV. I have 6 TVs
Yep.
in my house now, big
Right.
ones,
Right.
just it's like,
And then the
oh,
phones
what's
and the
this?
tablets, and it's like it becomes very overwhelming as a parent. What about you, Cody? What are some things, maybe some challenges that you've seen when it comes to being a dad in today's society when it comes to media, maybe compared to when you were growing up in different times?
Well, I can absolutely relate to you, Darren, because my 2 youngest daughters are close to the same age yours. They're 6 and 11, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the access to information now is just so much more readily available than what we had as kids, and what that's created is a short attention span, right? Like our kids have the attention span of like less than 2 seconds, and then they're captivated by some of the most ridiculous things as well. Like I give my daughter such a hard time too because she watches people play games or
Yep.
other stuff, and I'm like, this is just what they
Why
call.
don't you go do that?
Yeah.
You don't have to watch other people. do it.
Exactly. Like, why,
Yeah.
you just go apply yourself and
Yep.
do it. But look, it's so much different because there was such more. There was the way that we had access to information, like you said years ago when I was a kid, was so much different then, and dating ourselves with the VHS and all that stuff, single TV in the house. But I do believe too, like back when we were younger, there was more of an American spirit about films and movies and like the good versus evil and like the hero and such, and now there's just a lot of noise and junk out there that you really have to kind of watch out for, and it's hard as a parent because if you're not paying attention, your kids are getting influenced by other people's ideology or other people's thoughts and ideas that maybe aren't aligned with your own values and such, and it's very easily impregnated into all these little shows and things that they're watching now, um, it's something to be aware of for sure.
I feel like Brian's getting a good education from us since his kid's
Yeah.
like 16 months
He's
old.
just getting started. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's on Blue's Clues and
Stay with it.
Yeah,
Baby Einstein. Just stick with
yeah, Baby
as long as you can.
Einstein, and the really simple stuff. But it is to be quite frank, as a young father, it's a little scary to think about that, and also knowing that the reality is you only have so much control. We can put password protections on things at house, but people go to their friend's house or they go spend a night with so and so, right? And they get access to things. So I think as a father, it's really important, or as a parent, it's really important that you instill really good values and virtues so that they know the difference between good and bad. They know the difference between right and wrong. And then they also value other people's opinions, right? We're not necessarily trying to box our kids in and say, this is, the only way to do things. You want them to have some creative spirit and to be able to process and think about things on their own. But there's only so much you can do, right? That's the hard truth. So laying that strong foundation at a young age, when your kid is my daughter's age, 16 months, it's like, yeah, she doesn't understand everything, but just like having those conversations, being careful what she has access to, and making sure she's trying to have as many good influences as possible. I feel like that's the best you can do as a parent. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned is kids are going to make their own choices, right?
I've got an example for you. So this is recent, like in the last 3 weeks. We're going out. Steph and I are heading out, and the babysitter comes over. Emma's in her 20s. And Josie comes up, they're in front of the TV. Hey, I want to watch that show, Stranger Things. My friend Ava loves it. My classmates all watch it in the 2nd grade. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I've seen the whole thing. I like Josie. I think you're gonna have a hard time with it. Nope. And Emma loves it. She's seen it multiple times. Like, all right, go for it. And yeah, for the next 2 weeks, Josie was in her room every single night, terrified.
Scared to go to sleep. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that she's scared; she's self-doubting herself. Where it's just like, why am I so scared of this stuff that my friends really like? And now we were what were we watching yesterday? I can't remember what it was, but is there a scary part coming up? Is there scary? I got to leave the room. I'm like, oh crap! Now we got to go to therapy or something.
Yeah.
It is big influences because things are so in your face. And it used to be you would see this stuff on accident. Now I can tell them, don't watch this and then they make a decision if they want to or not.
Yeah.
But that's really where the life lesson comes. Dad was right. I shouldn't have seen this, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's some power there, right? Sometimes you intentionally let them so that they can kind of learn. It's kind of
That'll
a,
learn you. That's what we
yeah,
used to say.
yeah. It's like the whole "don't touch a hot stove," and then you touch the hot stove, and you're like, "Oops, Dad was right. You shouldn't have touched the hot stove," right? But with media and how that influences kids today, and then parenting, I think it's something that's definitely tough, right? I see kids today out socializing. It's really interesting. You walk into a restaurant and there's 4 high school kids at a table or 3, and they're all on their phones. Like, they're not even talking to each other. They're like texting each other and, sending each other TikToks and stuff like that. And the social aspect of socializing has gone away. And it's, you think about where that starts sometimes, and sometimes it starts at home with, how much consumption they have, the access to the information, what they consume. But it's really challenging, I think, in today's society, because you're fighting what has become, as a parent, the new norm. It is the new norm for a 5 or 6 year old kid to have an iPhone, right? Like, these things are like $1,000+ and it's like you're handing it to a 5-year-old, and yeah, you have all the parental restrictions and stuff on there, but the reality is it's kind of rewiring their brain for access to information, and Cody mentioned attention span and different things like that. So I don't know. It's a really challenging thing to always do as a parent, because sometimes you're just like, oh, I just need 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Go play on your tablet. I need
that
5
happens.
minutes, right? And we've all been there, right? It's like, oh, here, watch this for 5 minutes because I need to go use the restroom. So how have you guys kind of navigated that as being, slightly more experienced, I would say, as parents?
You want to go first? You want to go
Go.
first?
Yeah.
No, so recent example, you texted me this weekend, where should I go? That had, like, in the Heights, that have places where kids can play, turfed areas and all that. When you go to that, it's fine. They make friends and they run away. But if you take a kid, our age kids, to a restaurant that doesn't have anything else going on, my kids, can I watch your phone? Every single time at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you're going to be like, fine, freaking do it. Like, we're trying to have a nice dinner, and yeah, you have to be prepared to, like, bring the coloring books and stuff, but
Yep.
eventually they're going to kind of age out of that. That's what they're going to ask for, because that's what they see at home.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. I mean, like, we have to be a little bit self-aware because it's a learned behavior. They're going to learn it not only from their social
That's a good
network, but
point.
they're also going to learn it from you at home. And how easily do we do it at home? I know I'm very guilty of this in the past, where, like, I'll come home, I just want to decompress, and maybe it's just doom scrolling on my
Yep.
phone, and the
Yep.
kids are talking. Maybe my wife is talking to me, and you're kind of halfway paying attention, but you're just still kind of doom scrolling. And so what happens is the family picks up on that behavior, and then they normalize that behavior, and then they mimic that behavior, right? So your kids are, their natural gravitation now is, well, I want a screen because, well,
Dad's always on a
mommy
screen.
and daddy
Mom,
are
yeah.
on a screen,
Yep.
or whatever. And so it's important for us to be self-aware, and I'm talking to myself here,
Sure.
when in those moments, to be very present and visible, and be able to put the screens down and put the phones down, and be intentful about the time that we're spending with our family, and that's something that I've tried to do, especially here over the last probably year or two, is if my wife and kids are talking to me, great, I need to put the phone down.
Right.
If we're eating dinner, great, let's have a conversation. Let's really spend, time being intentful about how we interact with one another.
You know what we've been doing? We got a tool off Amazon, which is a card deck with just basic questions about lives.
Oh,
and
that's
you
cool.
just conversation starters,
Nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it would work, but it did. I mean, now the 4-year-old, not so much, but with Josie, she's kind of having fun. Like, even before bedtime, we'll break them out. They're in bed, kind of laying around, and tell me about your day. But then, how about this? Gets the megabits working.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think what I'm taking away from this is there needs to be intentionality and thought behind everything that you do in front of your kids, right? So not being on your phone. And that's one of the beautiful things about either having a good job that doesn't demand your time after hours, or being an entrepreneur, where you can say, hey, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever it is, until my kids go down, phone down, do not disturb. Not gonna be distracted because the kids are watching you. They're sort of mimicking our behavior. But also, to Darren's point about the thing you bought, being intentional about, okay, I know my kids are naturally going to gravitate towards the TV, the phone, the tablet, whatever. What other things can we do as a family to distract them? And those things too end up becoming really powerful memories, I think, long term for kids. When you think about what they remember as a young adult, as a teenager, or growing up even older. They remember those funny conversations with dad. Of course, they're going to remember watching a movie together as a family and things like that as well. But the funny conversations, the games, the outdoor activities, those are the things you really remember as a kid. You don't remember the TikTok video you watched, earlier today. So I think trying to be intentional about creating memories with your kids and not being distracted, it's an ever going it's an ever going thing. It's a never changing thing. It probably constantly morphs as you age, as your kid ages. But it's part of being a parent. It's part of the fight.
I volunteer for the Big Brother program, and it's at the school, right? So I have a little, and he's in the 5th grade. Um, I struggled for a while to find activities where I could get him to open up and talk. You know, we did some board games, which is okay, and did some Legos, but the beginning of this month, it really clicked where Josie had a Christmas present she was never going to talk. They're snap circuits. So you put together circuits and they do things. They play music and fans spin, kind of like learning electronics. Took it to school and man, it just clicked. She's like, this is awesome. And then the outpouring of information was able to happen where he opened up, it is finding about what do they actually like versus what are you trying to imprint upon them.
Yep. And every kid's different. I've
Every
learned that.
kid's different, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, and then that's a unique experience too. Talk to us a little bit, if you don't mind, about the Big Brother experience. How's that kind of impacted you being a part of that, and what have you seen through that?
I don't want to say it's an easy program because for some people it's not. But the elementary school, we go to public school in the Heights. It's a very small school, pre-K through 5th grade. There's a lot bigger schools around. It's just how it's zoned. So it's an hour out of my time, which I have time. I make time for it every week. Because I do have daughters. I wonder how the other half is living with boys, and get to talk to them about sports and other things that the girls may not want to talk about. It's an important program because it's always with the disadvantaged youth in some form of fashion, whether there's something going on at home, whether there's a divorce or an economic thing or whatever. But it does make a big impact, I think. But I've been doing it now for, I want to say 6 or 7 months, but this is the first month where everything's really coming together.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
yeah, sometimes it takes a while. It's a trust thing when you're only there once every other week or something like that to build it up.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I mean, you strike me as somebody who's man of sacrifice. But you spent time in the military, which, by the way, thank you for your service. Really, really appreciate that, and all that you've done for our country. But then also being able to give your time, away from your job, your business, your family, to spend time with these disadvantaged kids and those opportunities, man. So that's a big kudos to you, man.
Thanks.
Cheers.
I mean, it all
Cheers.
came from my mom. Like I said, she was a social worker. Especially in that part of town, you don't make a lot of money, but she dedicated her time. We volunteered at churches and other things, and it's just something that I've always done. I've always worked with kids and animals throughout my entire life.
And you have a lot of
Um,
pets.
yeah. We have 2 dogs and 3 cats, all pulled off the street. But my wife was, she's a VP of intake for Pup Squad Animal Rescue. She rescued thousands of animals just that went through her old house when we first met.
Oh,
And
wow.
again, it's just something that we can do with our time that gives us a good peace of mind and we love doing and, we have time for it. So
So let's talk a little bit about that since you mentioned time, because it sounds like you have, I would assume, a very busy schedule, between your company, your promotions that you do, um, the Big Brother, your family. You have all these things going on. How are you managing that balance of work and entrepreneurship and then life at home? Talk to us a little bit more about that schedule.
yeah, and it can be challenging for sure. Beta Ray Companies is set up where I'm the CEO and the day-to-day guy. Steph is our CFO, basically doing all the cleanup work for the messes that I create financially. And man, yeah, if she wasn't there, I would have been bankrupt a long time ago. But you get into a rhythm when you decide to go off and do your own thing, right? When I first left the W2 world, and I would coach people. And, okay, what's it like? And I'm like, well, the first month, you know what the heck you're doing. This is like what did I get myself into. But you get into a rhythm of knowing these days are generally not as busy as others. For me, Mondays and Fridays are generally lighter. And I set that time aside to ride bikes with the kids at school and make dinner. Make most of our dinners at home and stuff like that. We have weekly check-ins in the morning with the team on Mondays and Fridays, and then they tend to go off and do what they need to do on the day to day, and which leaves me time to do weekly check-ins with Brian and a few other people, participate in some masterminds. And when you're a business owner, it's all about sales all the time. You've got to do what you can to make sure you have enough money to make the business run, make your life happy and all that. And let me tell you, man, this time last year was tough. It was really lean times because 2023 was when I founded the company in September of that year. So last year was 24 was like, let's get out there and see if we can make it work. Last year was the year where, okay, we gotta really go for it. But it really didn't happen until March, where I got my first long-term contract. So I was doing everything I could just to be a good husband and help with the kids and do everything to offload for Steph, because she was the one that was working really, really hard, And you just gotta balance the time with the things you have to do, appreciate the things you don't have to do. And that's one of the coaching things. I was like, man, I don't have to get up at 6 a.m. for a 7 a.m. Zoom call with people I don't care about and talking about crap that I don't care about. And, oh, well, you have to go to this lunch with the crew or this happy hour. I'm like, oh God, I'd rather be doing anything else right now. You don't have to do that. And that has a very big empowerment factor for me.
Scary at first too.
It is scary.
Yeah.
It is scary because, again, you're off the schedule. So he knows the story, which is when I left the W-2 world, I had what's called a pile next to my bed, which is all the old khaki pants and Joseph Bank shirts and belts and crappy shoes that I used to have to wear when I had to go to an office or a cubicle, and they were stacked up. So that was the first thing I saw when I got out of bed, because if this doesn't work, this is what you're going to have to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big motivator for me. And every now and then when we have a down month, Steph's like, hey, maybe you should think about making it, babe, that's not going to happen. Because, and this is a true story. I did not like working for other people. I had great bosses and great mentors, but I hated working for other folks, man. I just felt like I got no skin in this game, no matter what position I was in. So for me, a big driving factor of getting my time together and getting my time back was doing my own thing.
Yeah. We talked about that, I think, on a previous episode, that at a certain point, and this isn't for everyone, some people might go, oh, that's crazy, Brian. At a certain point in life, and I don't know if it's like, I feel like I'm kind of getting there now in my late 30s, you realize, money's important. It's a tool. Of course, you need it. But especially as you start a family and your kids start to grow, you realize your most valuable asset is actually your time. We could all probably go get higher paying, successful corporate jobs, making high six figures, but miss out on the date nights, miss out on the family activities, miss out on the competitions, that your kids are in for their different activities. Is it worth it? There's an opportunity cost that comes with it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, Cody asked a question about having a balanced life. A lot of entrepreneurs take that leap of faith because they want that more balanced life. It's not necessarily.
You're in the thick of it right now.
I'm in the thick of it right now. Absolutely.
Just recently.
Absolutely. Very similar story to you. You just mentioned the first few months. You were like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm like, that sounds like me, but you figure it out as you go, and things. I was talking to Cody about this on the way up here. The more you put yourself out there, opportunities just tend to pop up. Right. The more conversations you have, the more with people that are of the same mindset, opportunities just tend to find you if you're the right character person. People want to work with you. Right. But the point about a balanced life, I think that's a big motivating factor for a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's challenging. And I know you've given me some great tips about stuff that you and Steph do, like, wine Wednesdays and different things like that.
Get a babysitter, man.
Get a babysitter. Right.
I love a guy. Get a babysitter.
Go to daycare. I mean, all these different things. Right. But having that balanced life, it's a constant challenge. If you're in the corporate life, and it's not impossible. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are doing it, but I think you have to set up guardrails. Whether you're a highly paid professional person or you're an entrepreneur, there has to be guardrails, because entrepreneurship, the downside to it is you're always on, right? Like, you could be working all the time.
I tell everybody, I'm never off in this job.
Yep.
Never. Just text me if you need something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't call me, but you can text me.
Yep.
I'll get to it.
100%. So if you're not setting up those guardrails, it's very easy to not have a balanced life, and you could get back into the spiral of chasing the money, making a lot more money, which you feel really good about. Your car's nicer, your house is bigger, your family are maybe going on more vacations, but you lose that balanced life. So how, give us some examples of some things that you've done to kind of protect your time being an entrepreneur now.
As an entrepreneur, work on your body. That is something that I really believe in, because when it's just you, when you're starting out, you're behind your desk all the time. again, I think you got the treadmill I told you to get
Yep.
for under your
Walking
desk,
desk, standing desk, walking treadmill. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I hadn't had a fitness goal in a long time. I go to the gym, play pickleball and stuff, but this is the first, I don't want to say it's a resolution, but like, okay, I had to get something to work towards, which has been exciting. We're part of a 4-man team. Make sure you balance it out, make time for your kids, but the time for you can be whatever. People know me. I play video games like a fiend. I've got every system out there. I have a big multicade arcade system in my house. I can do that over the holidays because HR hiring really slows down at that time. And last year I had to approach staff. I'm like, hey, it's we're like second week in November. Hey, we're good for the rest of the year, right? Like we've got cash flow. And oh yeah, we're fine. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go play Call of Duty. Don't bug me. But second week in January, I cut all that shit out. Like, okay, let's refocus on this. Let's focus on the physical part. And otherwise you just end up wasting time where it should have been time garnered for other things.
I think, when it comes to protecting your time, knowing when you work is really important. So if there's certain months or weeks or time, but also doing, whether it's Call of Duty or something else, you got to have those things on your schedule, whatever it is that helps you stay balanced in life. Wine Wednesdays, going to play pickleball every Monday, going to the gym Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, hanging out with kids for game board night, whatever it is your thing is as a family, putting those on the schedule and staying disciplined to actually doing them helps remind you and also motivate you too as an entrepreneur. Because when you're living that moment, you're like, this is so cool that it's like 1:00 on a Thursday and I'm like at my kid's school having lunch with them.
If you're married, the other piece is get your wife involved and make sure you have creative outlets. You can get in a rut when you're taking care of the kid, you're taking care of your business, or your spouse is working their job, and the creative outlets just kind of start fading because you're just watching TV when you can and doing the day to day. Christmas this year, I bought Steffi a bunch of gift certificates to go do different art classes and whatnot because I want her to be involved in things.
We're talking about balanced life, but as spouses, we have to remember like it's also our responsibility to make sure that our spouse is living a balanced life too, right? So that's one of the gifts you get as being a husband is, it's not just about us, it's about the marriage, the partnership. So all these things we're talking about, and we spend a lot of time talking about the kids and fatherhood and the work-life balance and us being balanced, but we have to remember that our spouse needs to be balanced as well. So whether it's a date night, and this is something that I know as a young father, and that I told you when like we went out a few weeks ago, I haven't done a good job of, but we're starting to kind of come out of that funk. But making sure your spouse is living that balanced life with you, so you don't want them to get envious, right? Like, oh, look at you,
That's
you wake up
happened.
when you
It
want,
happens.
you
It
go to bed
happens.
when you
Yeah.
want,
Mhm.
you go out when you want, you're always talking to people, you're always networking, you're doing a podcast while I'm in a meeting. You don't want there to be envy, or sort of friction there as well. So I know you sound like you have a story there.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's just happened. Like, we have an expense accountant and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, "You're going to another lunch. Like, who are you meeting with? That's
Mhm.
just your buddy. What are you doing?" Like, no. We're talking about this,
Yep.
and this because, like you said at the very beginning, you have to make money in your entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
things get worse. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you've read the same book as well, but one of the most impactful books that I've read along this journey is The One Thing by Gary Keller, right? And he talks about this concept of work-life balance, and it really doesn't exist, honestly. There's no way that you can balance the life of an entrepreneur and, your regular everyday life. But somebody that successfully does this understands that there's going to be those times where you have to allocate more time towards a business because it requires your attention, but you have to be able to step away from it when it doesn't require that attention and get back to what's your other priorities, obviously your family and things
It's
like
that
that.
old question: do you live to work or do you work to live?
Exactly.
There's another book. I can't remember the name of the author, called 18 Summers for Fathers to read, which is that's all you have with the kids. 18 summers. If you look at it as 18 summer vacations is what you've got to work with. Time becomes a factor. What you want to get out of it.
That's crazy. I've heard different things like that. I think I was at a thing recently where they put up all the years you have left as a man, because like the average man dies in his like I don't know early 70s.
It's called the 80 grid. 80
Yeah, I
grid
think we actually
exercise.
did it
I did
together.
it.
Yeah, it was you.
I did it
Yeah.
That's right. It's that was a while ago.
But
Yeah.
that when you see that on a piece of paper, like if you were to put 18 circles on a piece of paper with your kid, and let's say your kid is your daughter's age, 5, 6, 7, you're like,
Mhm.
oh crap, I have 10 left,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I only have 10. That hits you pretty fast
Mhm.
and pretty hard when you're talking about, how you spend your time, work-life balance. Um, just that feeling you get in that moment it's kind of indescribable. It's hard to describe how you're feeling when you realize you have such little time with
Clock
them.
is ticking, man. Yeah.
Clock is always
Mhm.
ticking. Clock is always ticking.
And it seems to go by faster and faster and faster as we get older, right? So,
Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, as you get older, you perceive time differently. To a 7-year-old, a 5-minute timeout that seems like forever. Weeks and months go by. We're like, we cannot believe it's almost March.
I mean, with life moving so fast, especially with all the stimulus we have going on in our lives, it's like you said, it's going back to just like you said, being intentful, right?
Mhm.
Just taking time to get away from all that stimulus and focusing on that true relationship that you have. And I'm going through this right now. Actually, you talk about the 18 summers. Like my daughter, like I said, she's 11, going to be 12 this year. My son's 21, and I remember him going through that transition of I want to be around mom and dad all the time. I want to hang out to mom and dad to where all of a sudden now
You're not cool.
you're
You
not
never see
cool. They
it.
don't want to hang out
Yeah.
with you no more.
Mhm.
And it's hard, man. It's so hard because that's them growing up and maturing. But then, like you said, you realize like, man, my time has run out with them. Like my son's 21 now. He's off doing his own thing. And then my 12-year-old, she's still got a little time, but 6 more years, she's out in college and she's gonna be doing her own thing. And
And by the time you get to that 18 summer where maybe you do a big parent trip, is she going to be focused on what that, or is
right.
she going to be going off and doing other things?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So time is now, man, for sure. Take
Time is
advantage
now.
of it.
Yep. And that brings it, full circle. I think we talked a lot about media and how our kids spend their time, what they're watching, what we watched growing up, the challenges of like balancing your life and entrepreneurship, and all that circles into realizing that for me that our time on earth is short, and then our time with our families is even shorter, especially if we have little ones. I'm assuming most people that are listening, have a family, have some kids, and if you don't and you aspire to have kids, it's something that you don't realize is important until you're like in the thick of it, and it hits you and you hear these conversations, or you look down on the calendar and you're like, oh man, she's already 1, and then she's already 10, and then she's 21, graduating from college. Or so value your time, be careful with how you spend it, because it's the one thing that we can't get back. As entrepreneurs or as successful corporate employees, we can go make more money. We can go start another business. When we're all dead and people are at, our funeral, reading our obituary or whatever, and no one's probably, or you're on your deathbed, you're probably not going to think, man, I wish I started one more company, or I wish I made an extra $1 million, or I wish I did this. You're probably regretting, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish we did more things together. So those things I think kind of hit you, not to be morbid, but you just got to remember life's short and enjoy it, and enjoy those moments with your kids and have fun with it, and just make the most of it, because our time here is short, especially with our families.
Well, Darren, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about your kids and your family because, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure, every sacrifice you make is for your family. You want to give them, a life of abundance, and I'm sure, but what's your perception of the future for your kids? Like, are you optimistic? What's your outlook for your kids? I know that seems like a weird question, but
No, and you can do that as an all-encompassing idea, or you can silo it into different things. Are we setting up the kids for educational success, financial success, cultural success, and all that? I do tend to pull them apart. We have great 529s. Not worried about if they want to go to college later on. The families really set them up for that good stuff. We're giving them a good cultural experience, I think, with taking them on trips and, encouraging languages and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, but ultimately, it's going to be their decision. One of the I left this piece out. So my parents both went to Kent State University. They're both graduates, which back then it was almost a guarantee you could get in if you were the kid. And I applied to Kent State, got accepted. I would have flunked out in a semester. I had no drive, and for me, I needed discipline. I knew this. I was always team captain in the sports that I was, a wrestling and lacrosse player. But in life, I knew I'd probably get ripped apart. So going in the Army enlisting was my way out of that. That is something that is always there for any parent ever.
Mm.
If or anybody is listening to this that maybe they're in their 20s or something, they don't know what to do with their lives. Well, just give it a shot. If you can do push-ups and you're not covered head to toe in tattoos. That is an outlet that you can go and change your life overnight almost, right? I have good outlook for my kids.
Well, it seems like they have a good role model, right? Because you're out there, you're kind of paving your own path. You're building this life of hopefully abundance for you and your family, and taking control of life, and that's a good, I think, a good role model for kids nowadays because, where they get their influence from the outside world, which some may be good, some not so good. It's good to have a positive role model in the house.
Yeah, I think me being a young dad, I think overall, I would say I've learned that it's important, regardless of what's going on, because there's so much noise out there with social media, with the internet, with politics, that if you don't have a positive outlook on life and the world, business, anything at home, that's what tends to breed pessimism, right? We all know adults that have a very negative outlook on everything in life, right? Where does that start? Well, that starts at home most of the time, right? A lot of times people are influenced. They have bad friend groups. Maybe they go to, the wrong schools or uh, run into the wrong people in life and kind of, get rubbed off on. But I think making sure at home, no matter how you're feeling about who won the election or what so and so said on TV or this video that came out or the song everyone's talking about, your kids need to be sort of sheltered from that and how maybe you're personally feeling about it. Of course, it's good to share your feelings and be positive, and let them know how you're feeling about things in a certain way, but you just have to be very careful, I think. And if you don't do that, that's when you tend to breed that sort of pessimism.
I want to expand on that a little bit if I can. And Darren, I want to go back and highlight a point you made, which you mentioned getting your spouse involved, getting your wife involved in your business and working along each other. You and I were talking about this last week. I think the mistake that a lot of people make, especially when when you start to build a family, is you prioritize the kids over the nucleus of the family, which is the husband and the wife, right? The spouses, the relationship. And not just, and a lot of people are going to hear that and they're like, oh my God, my kids are everything. Yes, your kids are everything to you. But if you don't have a strong bond with your spouse and a strong relationship, and that doesn't reflect on your kids, then it's going to create a bad environment at home. So when the kids see that, man, mom and dad love each other and they're always happy, or we have just such a positive atmosphere at home, I think that's going to set kids up for success in the future, right? They're going to value relationships much differently than somebody who's come from a broken home or a household that maybe didn't have that same
Sure.
upbringing. So I, gue- m- I guess my point is it's really important to make sure that you really preserve and prioritize the relationship with your spouse first amongst anything, because without that, you can't be the best version of the parents you need to be for your kids.
I was married before in the Army a long time ago, right? Never thought about having kids ever until I met Steph. And I'm not even sure if she was really keen on the idea when we met. I don't recall it ever coming up in conversation. So when you have kids, especially later in life, like we are, you really start to think about your youth. It's very hard to do unless you're just like all in, which I wasn't necessarily all in at the very beginning. But I was also working a job I hated and all these other environmental things that just kind of made it not that great. And stuff did, and I did go through some tough times, for a couple of years. And but we came out on the other side, and it was fine. But it was just really setting, as we talked about, my life up for the life that I want, and knowing that she already had a life that she wants on the work side, and then trying to make them work together and talking. People talk, but man, I'm telling you that just one night a week, sit down, kids are in bed, have a glass of wine, tell me about your day. I want to know what we can work on and give me the deltas that we're going through and what are the positives and what do we have coming up that we can reflect back on.
Who was it? This was years ago. I forget what resource it was, but they said they would actually schedule their family time into their calendar. Not because they were that structured, but because that was a priority to them. If it wasn't in their calendar,
Mm.
then it never happened. So for them, their priority was their family time. So they purposely scheduled their calendar to have that family time included, and everything else was blocked out around that. And I thought that was really powerful. Like you said, just making it that point, whatever it is, that one moment a week, a day, whatever it is, this is going to be uninterrupted time with me and the family or whatever.
We were pretty bad about letting things build up, because we didn't do that check in. All of a sudden, 3 months later, you have a drag out fight. It's like,
Yep.
I didn't know this. It's like, I probably did know that, but that was a couple months ago. So everything in life is communication, relationships, and that includes your house.
Absolutely.
Yep. I've learned it's like a balloon that tends to fill over time and it just pops one day. And
Mhm.
you never quite know what causes the pop.
It
could be the smallest thing.
anything. I dropped that thing on the floor.
I forgot to take out the trash,
Yeah.
or it could be the smallest thing. But we're all human beings, and I don't think most people try to avoid conflict, I would say. But if you're not careful, those things will tend to build up over time.
Are you helping like fold laundry, baby clothes, and
Oh
that
yeah,
sort of stuff?
absolutely.
Do that. That's a big help.
Yeah, if the laundry is, I mean, everyone loves. If there was a service you could pay for to fold laundry, sign me up. Especially at this phase in life, right? You got your clothes and your baby's clothes, but another story for another day. But yeah, being intentional with your spouse and not letting things build and trying to talk about things. I think it's naturally uncomfortable for a man at first, and it's very different. We had a conversation, Cody. I think I can't remember if it was on the show or not, but I think a lot of people get. You had mentioned something I think really important, that you have a life before you have a family, before you have a kid, and once you have a kid and your life changes, trying to go back to that old life and anchoring onto that, it's just not possible, right? What you need to realize is that there is a new life in front of you, not better or worse, just different, right? And how do you make the most of it, right? How do you make sure things don't fall apart? How do you make sure your relationship with your spouse is really strong? How do you make sure your kids have everything they need, not just like clothing and food, but just spiritually as well, emotionally, mentally? That's a really big challenge that you face every day as a man, and letting go of the past and looking towards the future and working on those things. It requires constant effort. It's I'm not gonna say it's a job, but it's what we sign up for. It's what we sign up for.
It's probably arguably the hardest job you have too, right?
It's most time consuming. Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about some of your companies real quick. Give you a chance to highlight some of those if you wouldn't mind. I know
Yep.
I love to hear more about the hot sauce company.
Yeah. Please tell us about. Let's start with the hot sauce, because I think
Yeah,
that
that's
has the
good because
most interesting
Captive
story.
Studios here has done a couple commercials for us in the past. We've hosted a professional wrestling show. We've hosted two of them here in their big room. Yeah, Headlock Hot Sauce was a idea I had during COVID when everybody was home and some people were baking bread and trying to make beer and stuff. And I had this idea for a carrot-based hot sauce. And everything just kind of clicked. The website that I wanted was available. I knew I could use pro wrestling as a medium to get people interested in it. I already knew a bunch of pro wrestling folks because I did some shows and whatnot. And it grew pretty quickly. But it's a very finicky business because everybody and their brother wants to make hot sauce. Everybody and their brother wants a bourbon company. Everybody wants to own a bar, and it's a tough biz. And Kari and Justin were gracious people and let us do a lot of stuff here to get the word out. But yeah, we've been able to, when you talk about variety of life, I don't know, for a lot of variety of people, from haunted house folks that I've been to places, to WWE types and all that kind of stuff. My girls have grown up around it too. Like there's plenty of photos of them in the ring, and I own a pro wrestling ring in conjunction with Headlock. Different aspects of it. We have our own belts and championship belts and all that. So I can talk the talk when it comes to the day-to-day Veda Ray companies, which is the recruiting, engineering, and virtual professionals. That is something that I do podcasts with. They don't know about this other side of this zany, crazy side. And once they learn that, they're like, oh, I interviewed this doctor who's a CPA back last week, but this is a way more interesting conversation. So Headlock is a product, headlockhotsauce.com, which is still cranking away. This is a big year for us on the marketing side. We're working with Chef Richard Knight, mentioned him earlier, to get some restaurants involved in doing pairings and that kind of stuff. Anything like that is an expensive hobby until you really do raise the money to make it go. I don't think we'll be there with it. It's fun and exciting and all that kind of stuff. It still is. And I still get really pumped over the hype. And, had a meeting this week with a wrestling promotion to get them involved. And it's like, oh, this is so cool. That makes them for great promo and all that. Coming here was great because I knew it would be an awesome experience. But most of my interviews and stuff is based on recruiting and consulting and engineering and all that.
Yeah. Well, man, congrats on all the success so far. Big kudos for being able to have just such a long, tremendous career and different aspects of your life, and wish you all the success moving forward. And we appreciate you being a guest on the show.
If anybody wants to order any hot sauce, how do they make that happen?
Headlockhotsauce.com. We're also on Amazon. You can find us on all the socials, and Yeah, if you order here locally, I might even deliver it for you.
Boom.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up, Darren. It's been great having you on the show as our first guest. You hold the
Really
belt.
honored,
We don't
man.
have a belt for you, unfortunately. I should have got a belt.
I'll just take this with me. And
Yeah, just take the bottle.
not doing that.
Just
I'm
give
not
me a
doing that.
shipment of hot sauce in return.
There you go. Just take the bottle with you. So it was an honor to have you on. You've been a good friend now for several years. Glad you got to meet Cody, and it's been great having you on the show. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. Hopefully, we'll have you on again
Oh, absolutely.
as a guest here in the future. Hear more about
once
your
you
success.
got 1 million downloads and
Once we have 1 million downloads.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you having you on. Looking forward to the next time.
All right, guys, appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Cheers. Appreciate you being here with us. Stay connected by joining our weekly newsletter called The Forge, delivered straight to your inbox with thoughts on business, work, family, and becoming a better man. Make sure to check out forgingbettermen.com to sign up. If this show hits home for you, then hit the follow button and leave us a review to help us reach more guys who would benefit from it. This is Under Pressure.